I'm a big fan of Westerns, and I can't help feeling that we're living in a modern-day remake of one of the old classic Western tropes, except on a much larger scale. And the trope is simple. A town elects what they believe to be a no-nonsense, get-things-done guy to be their sheriff, except the new sheriff immediately hires all his old riding buddies to be his deputies. And the sheriff and these buddies used to be a gang of thieving outlaws. Well, they're still a gang of thieving outlaws, but now they wear badges that allow them to claim the air of legitimacy as they make themselves rich, seize power, and generally take advantage of the town people. And to make things worse, our corrupt sheriff is President of the United States.
So what are we to do about the new president?
We're going to have to start doing some things very differently. Welcome to the Sky Pilot podcast that explores questions of faith, spirituality, and religion. I'm Dan Matthews, and I don't have all the answers, but I do enjoy the questions. Welcome to the podcast where every question is an invitation into a spiritual quest, and you're invited along for the journey. Hi, I'm Dan. This is Quark. Welcome to Sky Pilot Faith Quest Podcast, the video version. Let me start by saying, if you're looking for a 20-second short that's answering all your questions, that's not what we do here. These are important issues, and I believe they deserve some time focused on them, and that's what we're going to do here. So welcome aboard. Today is the final video in a series that we've been talking about the moral, faith, religious, ethical, and of course political problems presented by Donald Trump and some of his followers. We've spent several videos talking about him and them, and now it's time to turn the camera a bit and look at us. Because what we've been doing in response to him isn't working. So why is that? And how do we change what we're doing to be more successful in the future? I promise that all of these questions are going to be answered in this video. So first, since this is a faith-based channel, let's start with some moral grounding from a well-known passage of Scripture that really relates to what we're going to be talking about today. So let me read to you Matthew 25, 31 through 40. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. Then the King will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? When was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? When was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" And the King will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me." Now, this passage is absolutely central to the gospel of Jesus Christ. Interestingly, also, the ideal presented here to be followed by Jesus' followers is pretty central to socially aware progressives as well, kind of regardless of their belief system. Even those who are non-believers. I know those of us who are believers see this particular passage as a reminder that we do these things because God expects them of us, and that's absolutely true. But there are plenty of people who also believe that making sure the lost and forgotten individuals in our world are cared for is important to our world's survival and our own humanity. And I say that because there's a larger swath of people who believe in these things than I think we think very often. I begin with this scripture passage because it is our strength and it is our weakness. Compassion for those who are discarded by the world is, as I said, central to our faith. And central to liberal ideals as well, but it's also what Trump uses against us as a vulnerability. You've heard the phrase, "Don't sweat the small stuff." Well, those of us who are trying to be faithful to the teachings of Jesus Christ, I mean the real teachings of Christ as found in the Sermon on the Mount kind of stuff, we obsess over the small stuff. In our faith, you don't have to be rich. You don't have to be important by worldly standards to be seen as important to God. Matter of fact, the less important, less powerful you are, the more important it is, many of us believe, the more important it is for us to see you and care about what happens to you. the less important you are in the eyes of the world, the more important it is for us to try to make your life better. It is, again, a basic tenet of the Christian faith. And again, this passage I just read from Matthew could not be clearer on that point. Now, I'm going to use a story from a movie to begin to make my point, so allow me to tell you the story of one of my favorite movies of all time. The movie was released in 1985 and is entitled Silverado. It's a Western, and it very much follows the Western trope that I described in the start of this episode. The movie has a truly all-star cast. It stars John Cleese, Kevin Costner, Kevin Kline, Danny Glover, Scott Glenn, Linda Hunt, Jeff Goldblum, Brian Dennehy. Brian Dennehy plays the outlaw-turned-corrupt sheriff named Cobb. Kevin Kline plays the role of Payton, who rides into town and we discover is an old gang member of Cobb's. Payton has given up his outlaw ways and, as we soon discover, has a really kind heart. And there are multiple story arcs in this movie, but the one we're interested in for this illustration involves these three characters: Sheriff Cobb, old gang member Payton, and Stella the saloon manager, played by Linda Hunt. Though Sheriff Cobb and Payton used to ride in the same gang together, Cobb finds it amusing that Payton seems to get emotionally attached to something small, something unimportant that winds up being his weakness and his undoing. Here he is, Cobb, played by Brian Dennehy, telling the story to a couple of people in the saloon.
What I've seen, Peyton doesn't care about money.
He says he doesn't care about anything, but he does. There's just no telling what it's going to be. Howdy, Mr. Slick. Sure. Let me tell you about your friend Peyton. Me and him, and Tyree, and a few others, we did a good bit of riding together a few years back. And somewhere along the line, we picked up this dog. And one of the boys took to feeding it, so it followed us everywhere. Anyway, this one time, we're leaving a little Missouri town in quite a hurry. A bunch of the locals hot on our tail. And his dog somehow got tangled up with Tyree's horse. And Tyree went flying. Being Tyree, he shot the dog. Didn't kill him, no. But before you know it, Peyton is off his horse. And he's holding his dog. He'd gone all strange on us. Said we should go on without him. Well, I thought he was kidding at first, but he wasn't. All of a sudden, he's more worried about some mutt.
Cobb's point is clear. Getting emotionally attached, especially to something or someone, as it turns out, small and insignificant, something that should be seen as disposable, is a weakness and one that can be exploited to your detriment. What winds up happening later is that Peyton grows to be fond of Stella, Cobb figures this out, and threatens to hurt Stella if Peyton gets involved and tries to hinder or stop Cobb's illegal dealings in the town. Here's the lesson. I think it translates pretty well to our current day situation. We, those of us who stand in opposition to, well, almost everything Trump stands for, find ourselves in a unique situation. We worry about caring for the little guy. We sweat the small stuff. And Donald Trump sees that compassion for the people he doesn't value as not just a weakness, but something he can exploit. One of the very things that is core to our belief system is seen by Trump as a weakness to be exploited. So we stay strong to our beliefs and are trying to figure out how to oppose, how to go against, how to say this.
You already did, remember? Honors everything he does or stands for. Yeah, good point. Look, 2 episodes ago I said there are 2 things that make Trump so difficult to deal with from an opposition standpoint. 1, he feels no shame, and related, no compassion. If you catch him doing something shameful that would make someone else want to hide under a rock after being discovered, he doesn't care. If you expose his lack of compassion for those who are struggling or suffering, again, he doesn't care. Trump is unfazed. He literally has no interest or compassion for what happens to the little guy, or, as the Bible says, the least of these. Number 2, he seems to create chaos everywhere, all the time,
But the interesting thing is he enjoys the chaos he has created. He's comfortable with the chaos. I think at times he celebrates the chaos. So he doesn't have to pick a targeted issue that will raise the hackles of authentic Christians and caring liberals. He just has to go about his usual chaotic, non-compassionate leadership style and then figure out what's setting them off, Christians and liberals. And oddly, he doesn't run away from it. He's actually more likely to then lean into it and try to use it for his own advantage. The fact that we care about the small and insignificant is wonderful. It's also a liability when dealing with Trump. And I'm not saying we should change what we care about. I am saying we should be intentional and thoughtful about what we focus on.
Wait, but aren't you suggesting that we do a form of social and political triage? We look for people and issues that aren't going to get traction, and we forget about them.
No, actually, I'm not saying that at all, but I'm really glad you asked it because I don't want that confusion. I'm not saying that we should jettison or discard anyone. I'm saying that our responses to his leadership decisions are not always well targeted. Since I seem to be on a movie track, as of late, I'll give a brief illustration, continuing with the movie analogy. Look, let's say my channel becomes an overnight YouTube podcast sensation because of my amazingly thoughtful insights and also because people notice that I look remarkably similar to a younger Richard Gere.
Excuse me?
Look, this is my fantasy, and I'm going to tell it the way I want to tell it. Anyway, I'm discovered by a talent scout who manages to land me a breakout part in a big-budget romantic comedy. The other lead in this romantic comedy is going to be, let's say, Meryl Streep.
Is Streep a favorite of yours?
Actually, I just Googled the biggest female actors in Hollywood and picked the one that was roughly my age and had the biggest name recognition, and she fits the bill. The other choice would have been, I think, Michelle Pfeiffer, but I think Streep would probably be a bigger draw. Oh, and her personal political sensibilities fit the point of this story better. Anyway, back to my point. It's time for the movie poster to be created. Whose name gets top billing? Who gets the bigger picture on the poster?
Why Miss Streep, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Now, that doesn't mean that as a person, I'm less important. It doesn't mean in the eyes of God, I'm less important. It doesn't even mean I'm less important to Meryl Streep. It does mean someone along the way said, this is the name that's going to get traction. This is the name that's going to get noticed. And so it's important that she have the bigger name, the bigger picture on the poster. One of the most important things we can do as people who are opposing Trump is to be thoughtful and targeted and intentional about what issues get top billing.
Okay, I'm still not sure what you mean.
Okay, all right. I have seen several people who are promoting a no shopping day. I think it's being called an economic blackout day. And the purpose is to show those in leadership how powerful economically we are by collectively not buying anything on that one day. Here's the question. Is it really where we want to be spending our energy? First, I've read a fair number of studies on these economic blackout days, and in truth, they don't work. They don't work because they shift purchases to the next day or the previous day. There have been studies on similar blackout days when people all agree not to buy gas on a particular day. And you know what happens? Sales spike on the day before or the day after. The same amount of stuff actually gets purchased. We've just moved it to different days.
Okay, but why not? Does the blackout hurt the cause?
Well, yeah, no, probably not directly, not immediately, but I think our attention could be placed somewhere more important. I do think it diverts energies into a feel-good but less effective challenge to the direction of Trump's leadership. Okay, another example. There are people who are upset at the silliness of changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico.
That was a silly decision to make on Trump's part, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree. There are people, though, who are out there arguing about this when real, honest-to-goodness liberties are at stake for people in this country, and in truth, some major things are at stake for people around the world.
And do you have it figured out how we do this?
Okay, let me start with a confession. I've gotten this one wrong myself, and that's what I want to admit to begin with. Actually, that was part of my realization that led to this episode. Recently on Trump's inauguration day, I saw a picture of Elon Musk apparently doing the Nazi salute. And I was incensed. I sat down at my computer, I opened up Photoshop, and I created a meme as a response to his gesture. Boy, was he gonna be sorry.
Oh, yes, you were fired up on that day.
Yeah, I really was. I was ticked off by Elon Musk. Look, I don't like him to begin with, so when he seemingly gave the Nazi salute, I created a meme in an attempt to draw attention to it. Meanwhile, as Trump's latest court jester makes this offensive gesture,
Perhaps in the future you should refrain from attempting to use the word jester and gesture in the same sentence.
yeah, that's really good advice. Anyway, as Musk makes his Nazi salute, Trump is beginning his new term by signing executive orders that have real-life significance in the lives of millions of Americans. After I created it and posted it, I realized this. There were people who had just had their Medicaid turned off. And I'm worried about Elon's hand gestures. Look, I can't tell you how many times my social media feed has something recently about the goat statue that's been papered in $100 bills, that the $100 bills don't have Benjamin Franklin on them. They have Trump's picture. And the statue is on display at Mar-a-Lago. So I'm left wondering, why on earth are we spending any time worrying about a piece of art at Mar-a-Lago?
Yes, so there will not be a single word mentioned about it here.
Okay, that's fair. I get the irony that I've just talked about something that I'm saying we shouldn't be talking about.
Might I suggest that it's time to segue to the solution?
Yeah. Look, I think we need to apply a two-part test to our decision-making and responses. And to make my point, I want to remind everyone of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of need.
Abraham who?
Abraham Maslow. We studied him when I was getting my degree in psychology in college. The basic idea is that there are things everyone needs, but these things, they build upon each other. Think of it something like the food pyramid, but a pyramid of our needs as humans. At the base are the most basic needs. They are physical needs like breathing, food, water, shelter, clothing, sleep. The next level up is safety and security. The third level, above that, is love and belonging. Above that is self-esteem, and finally at the very top of the pyramid comes self-actualization. Now, one of the things to remember is that people can't work on or often aren't concerned with the issues that are higher up the pyramid if they haven't secured the lower tiers. If you can't breathe, if you don't have food, if you're hungry, if you're without a place to sleep, if you're without shelter, you probably aren't as concerned with how you're going to express your creativity today. I'm going to suggest that this is a helpful place to start. When deciding which issues to address, which to push back against, and to organize ourselves to oppose, for right now, I think we are best served to start at the bottom of the pyramid. Let's just look and focus on the first two levels of Maslow's hierarchy of need. Is renaming the Gulf of Mexico an issue of survival, or is it an issue of safety for people? If yes, then let's address it. But if it's not, let's move on, because I think there are plenty of issues that are truly within the most basic foundational needs of that hierarchy of needs, like healthcare or pulling out of the climate accord. These have real survival and long-term implication issues for survival and safety for people and our planet. And they do right now and down the road. Secondly, on a different track, but probably just as important at this point for us, is the Constitution. Let's be honest, one of the bedrock strengths of our nation is our Constitution. And core to that Constitution is the separation of powers. Donald Trump has been clear that he has no intention of following, obeying, or respecting the Constitution, and it's clearly laid out separation of powers. So, the other category that I think requires immediate and unwavering attention is making sure that the courts remain independent and strong, making sure that Trump, when he tries to disregard the law of the land, when he's taken to court, he is legally challenged, which leads to the final part of this plan. I think social media has its place. I mean, I create videos in an effort to push people into action and awareness, so I get the use of social media, but right now is the time that we have to be vocal. But the truth is we have to be more than vocal. We have to financially support the people and the organizations that can win these battles. I'm a fan of an organization called Democracy Docket for that kind of reason. It's an organization that fights for free and fair elections in the United States. I'll be honest, I financially support Democracy Docket. I think the work they do is really important. But right now, I'm looking for an organization, an additional organization to support. And the difficulty, as I understand it, is many of our court cases and legal challenges need to be undertaken by those who are affected, those who have their health insurance threatened, those who may lose their civil service jobs, states whose programs have been affected. So the fact that you don't like something that Trump has done doesn't give you the legal right to oppose it in court. The way our legal system works is that disliking a decision is not enough to be part of a legal challenge. You need to be personally affected. I'm not sure yet of a good organization to donate to and who will be working in the area of legal challenges to Trump and trying to put a stop to his ignoring the laws and ignoring our Constitution. If you know of an organization I should check out or tell people about, I'm currently looking at two. Brennan Center for Justice, they seem to be doing great work. Project Democracy, they seem to be doing great work. They're both doing great work, but I really want to be involved with an organization that is active in legal cases challenging this administration and the things it's doing. Okay, that's all for today. It's time that we become much more intentional as to what we focus on. And my suggestion is that we pour our energy and resources into any issue that threaten the first two tiers of Maslow's hierarchy of need. I think we need to stay focused right now on issues not that distract us, but really focus on survival issues and safety issues for individual. Also, we need to fight to preserve the integrity and respect in our nation for the principles found in our Constitution. And finally, but equally important at this point, is that we notice and we financially support anyone who is legally defending the little guy, legally protecting the independence of law enforcement, legally fighting for the independence of our courts, and legally fighting for the integrity of the Constitution. Look, I don't make a dime from this channel. I'm glad you watched it all the way to the end. This channel doesn't support me. I support it because I think this is important. If you agree, if you want to help, please like, subscribe, ring the bell, and best yet, share this video on your social media or with your friends. Thanks for watching. On your spiritual journey, may you ask questions, seek answers, and boldly go wherever the quest takes you. Thanks for joining us here today and being part of the SkyPilot Faith Quest community. This is a great place to ask questions you wouldn't feel comfortable or safe asking in other places. And remember, the sign of a strong faith, solid religion, or healthy spiritual journey is not certainty, but that you keep asking questions.